You ready?
Yes.
Good afternoon, everybody. It is 4:04. Today is Monday, September the 8th, 2025. And I'm Tom Nelson, President of Plan Commission, and welcome. Ms. Secretary, would you kindly take a roll call?
Yes, John Brown.
Here.
Teresa. Here. Judy. Greg.
Here.
Jackson.
Here.
Scott.
Here.
Tom.
Yes.
And no Susan. Absent.
Okay, everybody, it looks like we have no public hearings. This is kind of scary.
I
How
asked
about,
everybody if they were ready for their brain to hurt.
yeah, okay. How about the minutes from the last meeting, which was June 9th? Everybody read them? Any
There's a
complaints,
mistake.
suggestions, corrections?
There's a correction.
There is a correction.
My name's not on there for members present.
What are you trying to show me?
But I'm listed down below, so I know I was here.
And I was absent.
So that you just need to make a motion with that amendment. Or somebody.
Judy was here, John was not. Okay, motion to approve the minutes with the corrections that Judy was here, John was not.
I'll make a motion to change that.
Second.
Cool, we have a motion and a second. All in favor of approving them with the corrections made, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Same sign. Hearing none, the minutes are approved. Judy was here, John was not. Okay, well, darn, no public hearings. I guess we're ready for reports.
So you just have the permits that we got in the the second quarter of the year. And so I just usually tell you guys in 2024, we had 91 permits, and for the second quarter, which was $2,789,643 for the project cost, and this year we had 106, totaling $5,988,851. Any questions on that? That's just for information, so you don't have to vote or anything, so. You want me to just keep going? Down to new business?
You may as well.
Okay. So, I think we've had some discussion previously about neighborhood business and knowing that through town we have neighborhood business in a lot of different locations, but there are different types of neighborhood business really in each location. So, we're gonna start out with kind of looking at this map here. I'm not sure why I have this yellow dot, so please ignore that yellow dot. I'm not sure where it came from. But you can see that we have all these neighborhood businesses throughout the town, and each one is really a different kind of pocket. Marsh in downtown is different than kind of the business park up by Chase. The west side's different than, the south side. So all these little pockets. When we talk about neighborhood business, the issue's kind of been what uses make sense in each of these districts versus do we make a new district? Do we make material standards for certain districts, height of signs, setbacks, et cetera, et cetera. So what I wanted to do today was kind of go through the neighborhood business a little bit versus the other districts. So I have, I'm gonna hide this one for now. Maybe if my mouse works. So we have professional residential, neighborhood business, B3 and B4. Those are kind of our commercial districts. Obviously, professional residential is going to be more of your office and residential. Your neighborhood business does have some more commercial, professional office and residential. And then B3 and B4 don't allow for residential at all. So I just kind of wanted to quickly go through some of these things where you can kind of see the differences here, where different things are permitted in the neighborhood business, where they wouldn't be permitted maybe in PR. So, for example, single-family attached. So if we're doing townhomes, basically, or something like that, they would be allowed in neighborhood but not in professional residential, but it's not allowed in B3 or B4. So I'm just trying to get us to understand each district a little bit before we really dive into the discussion. The biggest thing, as you can tell, so that we talk about commercial garages to sale of vehicles to, it kind of changes when you get into those more intense uses. Obviously, B4 allows for those where B3 doesn't. So the kind of those intensities we've talked about over the years or / recently, you can kind of see how those intensities of commercials end up going more intense as you get into the B4 districts. But one of the things we talked about as staff was we currently have very interesting retail versus shopping centers. So this is something that I think would be interesting to focus on when we're looking at these districts, because we currently have retail no more than 1,000 and then retail up to 200,000. Well, that is a huge gap. Because in downtown, maybe we say it's only 1,000. Well, there's some that are 3,000 square foot. So maybe we want to look at changing that to more like to 5,000, and those are going to be your smaller areas and pockets where maybe 20,000 makes more sense, because we kind of calculated through town some of our larger commercial districts, what size those are, so the fast food restaurants to the little retail. One thing that was interesting to us, which I knew it, but also you don't always consider it, shopping centers is anything more than one. So like the R-Bar, that's actually a shopping center because there's two different uses in that one building. So it's a shopping center. So kind of wrapping our head around that, right? It's like it's a building that has a couple.
It has a laundromat.
Right.
Sure.
So it has an R-Bar and it has a laundromat. That's actually a shopping center because anything more than one is a shopping center. So in looking in that, we talked about our shopping center, which was the same situation, that it goes from 1,000, or I think it goes from under 100,000 to over 100,000. Well, that's again a huge gap. So if we're looking at uses we want to allow in some neighborhoods versus uses we want, like the R-Bar or the laundromat, that's going to be, yeah.
Question. Okay, so Sports Med and Tooth Fairy is in the other end of that same building, Denham. That is a shopping center.
Correct, because it has two different entrances. If you go into one building and then you split off into offices, that's different. But if a shopping center is its own storefront,
Okay, so.
how our ordinance defines.
Has its own entrance.
Right.
All right.
So where yours, I think, I don't know if they have their own shopping center, their own entrance, but they go in and then maybe you have the office here and then you have the office over here. That's still just more of your professional office in this case. But if it was retail, that would just be a retail facility, where if they have their own storefront individually, it's a shopping center. It seems strange, but that one's not retail, it's a
Yeah.
professional office. So
Yeah.
we wouldn't technically call it a shopping center, but it would be if it was selling retail in both of those.
Sure.
So maybe those smaller ones make sense in neighborhood business, but we say a shopping center under 100,000. So if you look at our square footage of shopping centers, that would mean everything but the mall or Hamstra or Eastgate or the Martin Strip, whatever you want to call it, would be allowed in the neighborhood business. But maybe that's not really what we want to see. So we talked about what are some of the standards. Maybe it looks like 700 square foot as a shopping center under is more of a neighborhood business. That would be more of like your R-Bar laundromat, smaller. And then we go up to 20,000, maybe that is allowed in some of, if we make a new district, that might be more appropriate as we look at stair stepping, again, those intensity of uses, and then going anything over 20,000. And like I said, we did some calculations on like the Big Lots building and the Martin's building, Eastgate. You know, we kind of calculated all the shopping centers in essence, or what could be a shopping center, into our calculations here. So I wanted to kind of give you that to think about, because that's an opportunity for us to change it, because it very, anything kind of under 100,000, like basically anything almost in town, if we said, yes, that's allowed, is going to be a huge shopping center in areas that we may not want it, but we could scale it back. So I just wanted to bring that up as a possibility of changing those square footages to make more sense for our community. We're not Indianapolis where maybe everything is 100,000 or over. So just a little bit of that there of understanding what those changes are. And then you go into churches, they're allowed in every district. Maybe we don't want to allow them in every district. To laundromats, government buildings, and just kind of seeing how those stair step up into B4 being the most intense commercial district. With me saying that, do we kind of understand that idea? And I can give you guys this, but I thought we'll walk through it here, and because it's like 5 pages long if I printed it. So we'll go through this, and then I can always send it to you to really look more in detail of, would I want this in these districts? This district might be okay, like the Marsh on 14th Street. Maybe we're okay with that type of use, but we're not okay with that by Chase Road. And so that's when we start thinking about, do we really need an additional district maybe? Because the intensity of the Marsh area is totally different than the intensity of the Chase Road or West End and those type of things. So we'll go back to the map here in a second as we look at this. But I just kind of wanted to show you before we got into it, what it's set up now. Just those intensities. Schools in different districts. Hospital is only allowed in PR. That's because the hospital, that's where it is. But is that the appropriate, or do we move hospitals to B4 and then that is, or neighborhood business, and we need to make that change to the use to be allowed in neighborhood? Because if you look at other PR districts, they wouldn't be appropriate for a hospital. Now, does that mean a hospital is going to go there? No, but we maybe want to keep where the hospital is, and so that's what we need to understand of these uses. Whatever we allow is the possibility to go there. Not saying it will, but it's the possibility, right? So if we say anything under 100,000 shopping center can go into the west side, anything under 100,000, and that's huge. So maybe that doesn't make sense for us. So what I really wanted to talk about today a little bit is going through the map mostly and understanding our different little pockets of neighborhood business. To see if my map works today would be good. Maybe. So up in this area, which it's not lining up right now, up in this area you have the gas station and a commercial garage in that area. Are those, now, some of them are grandfathered in, some of them have been allowed. This is Pleasant Hill. No, yes. College Hill, wrong hill. Pleasant Hill is the road by there. College Hill, right at the top by Dykeman. So does neighborhood business here represent the same neighborhood business on the east end? Or sorry, the west end? So what I thought I'd kind of go into, which I need to clear to make a little more sense here. And reload it. And understanding those uses, I thought we would just walk through the west end. And turn off this. I have too many layers on.
You kind of priming the pump for revisiting the comprehensive plan?
We can. The comprehensive plan doesn't specifically go into detail in the areas. It says in general, we want these type of businesses here. And then the regulation says it makes sense here, here, and here. So I don't know that we have to change the comprehensive plan. The future land use map, yes. But that's the only really part of the comprehensive plan that we would want to look at. But I thought the first, it might make more sense if we really look at the districts, because we could say, yeah, that's not really neighborhood business, that is more like a B3. So for example, one of the things that comes up time and time again is, which as developers come, they always look to the east end. People don't understand that, but they look for other national chains, they look for visibility, that's our high traffic area, so they're always gonna look to the east end. So when people say, well, why isn't more stuff happening on the west end? I would love Jimmy John's on the west end, but that's not something Jimmy John's is looking at, because each business is looking for their type, right? But in our ordinance, it just says restaurants. In our ordinance, it just says retail and the square footage of that retail. So we don't really get to pick what is going in each location, but we can say that this size or this intensity can go in this area. So, for example, our neighborhood business, as we were kind of talking about before, is definitely more residential with a little bit of commercial. It's olden days, Lombardi in the middle of the neighborhood, some of those smaller businesses that are services, less of a fast food restaurant, less of a retail, more of services to provide to that neighborhood. That's what the purpose of the neighborhood business district is. And I think we've gotten a little away from that, because in Logansport, not all communities, we have little pockets of almost a town, right? We have the north end where you have your CVS, you have what used to be the grocery store, we have the gas station, and that's its own little town in essence, and that's because of our history. Our history was, you had the Italians on this side, you had the Irish on this side, and so we had these little, like, almost downtowns. You have the north end that has its own little downtown, you have the south end that has its little downtown, and so you have that same thing on the west end, et cetera. So in looking at this, we have some B3 in this area, and we have some residential, which in essence makes sense of that neighborhood business. But if you look at the intensity of uses, like the gas stations, the commercial garages, are those really things that you want to see in the middle of a neighborhood? Right? So it's been built up this way, and I don't see it changing, but maybe it makes sense to create that new district, is what I'm saying. It's kind of the whole process of we're getting at here, is saying that is not the same as what that little gas station on College Hill is for that neighborhood. And so I have it already kind of planned. Go back. Sorry. I wish I could go back and forth. Maybe I can open another one. Make it easier to go back and forth to it. Wherever my zoning district is. Oh. So what we have existing, let's just start. So this is when you come over Market Street Bridge. You have your Logan Tire here. Logan Tire is neighborhood business. Does it make sense for our uses for our neighborhood business districts to have a commercial garage in it? We currently say a special exception, but maybe it's a use variance. We don't want that type of use in neighborhood business, but we don't mind that use in a new district that we create that kind of separates between the east end and that neighborhood, because we really jump from a neighborhood business to basically the east end, and that's a big jump. So in this area, that's what these are. Now, you have a beauty shop that's down in this area, and some professional offices. That makes sense, maybe, in that neighborhood business. It's a less intensity of a use. But what our current ordinance says in neighborhood business is that if you're on a major thoroughfare, you can have more intense uses. The concern we have with that is that usually across the street, you still have residential. So saying that these can be more intense uses, let's say they're not built up yet, we say a gas station can go there, that affects these people across the street. So I know this is how it is existing today. So these purple is B3, so that's the east end. That's the same district as the east end. So we allow anything that's on the east end to be on the west end. So do you want the, strip centers that you see, the Eastgate, the shopping centers, what have you, the McCords, those larger box on the west end? And maybe we do. Maybe if someone came in and was able to purchase this, we would be okay with it. Remembering that what happens is like the boulevard, all that has to be fenced off because we allowed all this commercial to happen on one side of the road and residential to happen on the other side of the road, right? So that impacts whatever we do in allowing, but everybody wants to be there, right? So we even had people say, well, I'm gonna buy up these houses and I'm gonna rezone, and I said, that's the boulevard. Your back side is the boulevard. It's unlikely that that would be rezoned. That doesn't mean that they couldn't go through that process. Yeah.
Just for kicks, what's the property zoned just south of the Dutch Mill?
That's B4.
Okay.
So I'm sorry, I told you wrong. So the west end is B4. That's our most intense commercial district. That's why there's a lot of commercial garages, gas stations, those type of uses, because those are things that we allow in our most intense commercial district. Is that really what we want to see on the west end, or we want to see more things like the east end, where we have the gas, or the food places, the little retails, those type of things?
I was just thinking about this particular area, as you know, because,
The gas station.
yeah, is going in there.
So we have, I point out gas stations a lot, commercial garages, because those are usually kind of hot topic ones. We have those right now that they have to go through special exception no matter
Just why it went.
why they came, yeah. I think, actually, do you have the book? Actually, I have it up here.
I do.
Let's look, commercial, because I know that one was a setback issue, but I don't know.
When you were talking about the main thoroughfare
It's easier for me to look in here.
and West Market going through there, and said, if we put in another gas station or whatever, there are residences, just across the street.
Yeah, so commercial garages, the only district that commercial garages, I know that's a gas station, so I'll look that up too. The only one that it's permitted in is B4. Guess what the whole west side is? Most of it's B4. That's why we have a lot of commercial garages.
Off of the thoroughfare.
Yeah. Some of it, so we could go back to that here in a minute. Automobile service stations, which is gas stations, permitted B4. So Burlington, where we have it zoned B4, it's not stopping any of those. So B4, because it's our most intense, is going to allow for those type of uses. Do these areas really make sense? I know you have to have them somewhere, but maybe B4 doesn't make sense anymore. Maybe B4 becomes something else. Maybe it's more of like what we would used to see B3, where we say it's a special exception, so we're looking at all of that, instead of just allowing it. Or maybe it's just these, like I said, I'm gonna really get your brain confused, and, because there's so many options that we can do. We can change all the uses to just say, special exception. Problem is then you have a meeting for every single use that's coming into town. And whether that's hard for them or easier for them, a lot of communities actually make every commercial permit come to the planning commission. I don't think that we're trying to do that. So what makes sense to me is re-looking at our districts and redefining our districts to say, these areas are more like this district or that district. And the B4, what you can actually do is, there's so many things with planning. What you can actually do is have that district there, but they would have to rezone it to that district to be able to have that use. Or you can just go to BZA, one of the two, instead of just outright allowing the B4. But I think what has happened is that we zoned, this is how it's been zoned since I've been here, so 20 years at least. We have allowed those type of uses to inundate our west side, south side, because that's how we wrote it in, and that's what we zoned it. So we need to rethink that a little bit when we're looking at these different pockets. So that's kind of why it's become that, in essence. Liquor stores permitted, B4, B3. Just some of the things that people see concerns with. Restaurants, you know, it's one of those things where restaurants are great, but they also, if you have a drive-in, can cause concern to the neighborhood, but maybe you want, you know, for example, like Soul Nutrition went in on the west side. That's great. That is a restaurant, in essence. It sells food, it's drinks and smoothies, so it's considered a restaurant. And so it's taking over a building that never, or hasn't been used in a while, and giving something to the west side. But what if we had Dunkin's go on that side? Would that cause traffic issues? We can't decipher what goes there. All we can say is restaurants. The only way we can do it is say, in this area, a restaurant is a special exception, meaning we like it to be there, but we want to make sure it fits in with the area because there's residential around it. So like Marsh Building, we've had the same conversation on Marsh with a possible gas station when we were going through a subdivision process. There was talks about the gas station. And then the neighbor said, well, I live in that area. That's a bigger intensity than the grocery store because of the trips and the lighting and all that. The problem is that we're used to the grocery store being there, but was the grocery store ever really fitting that neighborhood? That's pretty intense as well. And so I'm just priming you guys with this knowledge so that when you drive around in the next month, you can kind of look and see, you know, those uses don't really make sense here. I know that they're here, but that's not what we want to see happen. You know, Marsh Building will probably turn into more of that shopping center at some point. Yes, it's Trader Bucks right now, but smaller retail is really the market, where the market's going. So you could see that building get split up, and now we have another shopping center in the middle of town around residential.
There's the Soul Drinks. Which building did they take over? Like, what's?
There's a tax service. Is that right?
Oh, okay, clear, oh, okay. I see.
So
Like
there's a
very
retail, or there's a retailer now there, or real
Beauty
estate?
shop, right? Is there a beauty shop there now, too?
Okay, so that's the beauty shop. What's the one right next to it that's by
Jerry's
Jerry's
Pizza?
Pizza? It's in
Oh.
front of Jerry's.
Oh, tax place. Used to be taxes.
Yeah, I thought it was the tax place. That is the place that's Soul Nutrition.
Okay.
But then there's another building beside it that's a beauty shop.
And then there's Kessling.
Drive
Old
up,
Kessling.
coffee.
Designer
Drive-
Joe's.
Huh?
Designer Joe's.
Yeah,
that's
right.
what I meant.
I don't remember what that
And then you have
building was.
the
Bargain.
strip place where they have the blood draw and,
Right, behind
Twin
it.
Rivers is in the Cass County Extension.
So when I started looking, and goes back to my point, when I started looking at the West End, in reality of things, maybe we don't want to say B4 because it allows like the most intense commercial. But really, most of that strip, other than in front of like Arby's and stuff, there's some residential there, but most of it is really those more intense commercial. So you have some residential here and a couple right here. But the rest of it along here, and even these back here, there's one residence. I hate that I can't do it without all of this popping up for you, but back here, there's like one residence, and the rest are commercial garage, electrical, the Tokyo, DNR, and then we have the most intense industrial use. So what we did as a community when we set this up is we kind of said, West side is our blighted area. We're gonna do the most intense commercial, and we're gonna do the most intense industrial. In doing that, we had putting things on the west side of town. When you think of wind, it's going east, north. We've put these that come into our community. So as a planner, maybe when that was done, that wasn't the best of how we had it zoned. Now we have it zoned that way because, well, it's always been that way. But that doesn't mean we have to keep it that way. We can actually look at what's more appropriate for that area, right? So, I don't know, I didn't really get into we could talk about every district by trying not to. I'm trying to just stay with commercial. But in looking in this, all of these along here, that like the DNR, the old Corvette place, you got the gas station, you got B&K, you got Kessling's. Really, it is our side of town that is local East End, right? East End is your commercial and national chains, but same type of uses are on the West End, but they're more of our local people.
There's one big difference between the east end and the west end. If you look back 50 to 80 years,
40 years of investment.
well, I'm talking the railroad. There was rail access, which is another
Why
reason.
do you have all the industrial?
Exactly.
Yes.
And, there's still a train that goes through there. Whether or not they, any of those businesses in that area would ever accept rail deliveries anymore, I don't know.
Yeah. That's why I'm trying not to do industrial right now, because that's a whole nother can of worms. I'm just sticking with the commercial. But we have it neighborhood business. If we're really looking at this and saying, it's kind of the East End, but our local entrepreneurs, why do we have it zoned as neighborhood business? So we're either, one, making them go through a process, two, made neighborhood business more intense than what we really want it to be so that it fit the area, when in reality, maybe what we need to do is zone it B3, which is your East End. Does that, what I'm saying, make sense? And so,
But then so my question to that would be, if you make that thoroughfare a B3, then where does the B4 direct-to-consumer business fall into town?
right, so, right now, if you look at this, B4 is this purple, and neighborhood business is this pink.
Okay.
So-
I understand that.
So there's not a lot of B4 on the west end right now.
Be connecting the dots.
But the B4 that's there, they would be grandfathered in. So, let's say for instance, we would want to change it, just for example, B3, we would change it. And we would say that a gas station is now a special exception in that area, okay? So what that gives us the ability to do is say, yes, you can expand your gas station, but that's gonna impact this neighborhood. So we're able to put some conditions, saying, we want you to have lower signage, we want you to have landscaping, we want the parking to be facing away from the residents, we want
Dimmer lights and.
what have you, shield on the canopy, we want all these things. If we leave it B4, they can do whatever they want as long as they meet setbacks, really, because that use is allowed. So that's why I was saying the B4 is a discussion. We have to keep that, and we really need to dive in. This all started at neighborhood business, right? So, but you can see where you can get lost, because you're like, well, if you do this, then this happens, and then now where are you looking at these type of uses like you're bringing up? So we have to really then dive into what is in B4 that's not in B3, and do we really need the B4? Do we want anywhere in town to be a commercial garage without a process? Do we want a gas station anywhere in town without a process? Do we want, and you just kind of go through.
Most cities don't have B4s inside
Right,
Like inside their corporate limits.
right. It's going to be near your industrial parks, right outside your industrial parks, or those type of things.
They don't do it.
Right, and so when we look at that B4, it's more of, is what we're allowing in these areas, because really think Burlington Avenue is B4, most of it is. Does the most intense commercial district make sense on Burlington Avenue? No, it's like a downtown, kind of. I mean, a lot of it's built to the sidewalk, a lot of it's very small lots. So B4 doesn't really make sense. And that's why if that gas station that was going there met setbacks, they wouldn't even had to go to BZA, they could have just went in. Same with laundromats. That's kind of a new thing that we're seeing a lot of, laundromats popping up. Is laundromats something that we just want to allow in every district? Maybe. But maybe we don't. We want to have some regulation on that. Yes, it's important to provide that service, but we want to make sure that that service is provided and not impacting the neighborhood. And so, yes,
That's all right.
go ahead.
So it just kind of feels like the ground is shaking to consider moving those properties that are in purple, that are B4 to B3. And the exception would be granted and everybody be grandfathered in as a current property owner.
Correct.
But if somebody wants to sell their property, then the new owner would assume that under the B3.
They would, but they assume that as grandfathered in. So as long as they, like, so even signage,
If you
if,
allow them to continue the same means.
right. So like, let's say they're changing signage. It's a little bit different, so like the canopy would be a different sign.
Sure.
But what we can, in B3, before the difference, nothing in signage. So you can have the same signage in B4 as you do in B3. So signage is really not going to impact them. It's really the use that's allowed there. What we'd have to do if we decided to rezone anything, I'm just trying to get, do we rezone with the standards we have in place and change districts? Do we create a new district? Do we create an overlay because all we care is about signage being shorter in these districts? I'm just trying to see what's the appropriate mechanism. No matter what, if we would rezone this, any of these, those people that are impacted would get notification and say, come in, let's talk about it. We're going to talk about rezoning this. How does this affect you?
I would want to make doubly sure that
Yeah.
that happens because,
And usually what happens is you have the public meeting here, so they'd get notified about it. But council typically then makes me additionally notify when it goes to council. Even though that's not a requirement, that's just how council has operated the last few years. But,
If you change it, I think what we would want is, you've got to put the big 4 or 5 out there that are the hot topics between a 3 and a 4. And if it changes hands, you got to say, if you're buying this property, it's now going to become a 3, and these 5 things need to be reviewed before you do any expansion, development, whatever. And that is setbacks, lighting, signage, noise, whatever the big 5 are,
Right.
that are the difference between the two classifications. Because that's what we want to keep from happening, right? We don't want someone to buy it and then expand it and do exactly what we.
right. So the other option is, you could keep the zoning the same and say, yep, those uses are what we want to see in these areas. But we just want it scaled down with the lighting, signage, and the look. We can actually put standards in that way and say, we're going to keep the zoning exactly the same, but we're creating this overlay that anything in this area has to have shorter signage, dimmer lights. Maybe in these areas like Burlington, we want to say, we don't want the setback that B4 is. We like that they're to the sidewalk because it feels like a downtown. And so you change that setback for that overlay of that area. So it really depends on, do we want to look at each use, or do we just want to scale down that area to fit in with the neighborhood? So let's say that, for example, we change all this, neighborhood business goes up basically intensity and is allowed B3, which a lot of the uses that are there are somewhat B3 anyway. We scaled down the B4, right, so that some of those uses are gonna have to go through a process. Has that fixed it? Just by saying what uses are there? It may not. It may not still fit that neighborhood, meaning we still allow 35-foot signs. Does that make sense? Let's say Chase Road. Does that make sense for all those businesses out in that little business park to have 35-foot tall signs? Now, most of them don't want to do it because there's cost to that.
Next week.
Okay, you get it in before we change it. No, I'm just joking. But, so any of those districts can have that. Is our concern more of scaling back the intensity of the lighting, the signage, add more landscaping, how are they parking, where's the placement of the building? Or in some cases, and I'm just using West Side for example, is it the uses that we've allowed there? Or is it both? That's knowing how, and I think that obviously this isn't a public hearing, this is just discussion right now. I'm just trying to get you guys to understand kind of the thought process I'm going through is there's so many options. What is the real impact? Now, some uses are going to have the high traffic impact. Automatically, it doesn't matter, it's going to happen. So, if we allow those uses, you're gonna have that traffic. But, how we have it right now is because it's on a thoroughfare, we don't care because West Market is a big road and so it can handle it. But that doesn't mean it doesn't impact the neighbors in and out of a gas station all night long when you live across the street. And do those become more rental properties because no one wants to buy it for their home, which then impacts the values and et cetera, et cetera. So every decision that we make impacts the neighborhood, whether we do it through BZA, whether we do it from rezoning, whether we do it from the standards we're putting in place. And so that's just the discussion today, is understanding that so that when you guys are out and about in the next month, because I know Tom loves to do it, call me the next day and be like, I drove by it, and I was thinking, you're right here, I don't like this here, and I don't agree with you here. And then I go, yes, you do, Tom, this is why you agree with me. But anyway, it gives you kind of that thought process to start really thinking about all of those different impacts that uses make versus lighting standards make. There's the traffic with uses, the noise with it uses, the dust control, the vibrations, the odors, the whatever with uses. But maybe that's not the impact that's really causing a problem here on this side. So maybe it makes more sense to say, you know what, it's B3, we'll keep the B4, it's B3, just to allow for those uses to not have to come through the BZA because they're existing. And we'll put standards in place because it's scaled down to keep it smaller signage and more landscaping, what have you, yeah.
I will say that the last time that I was a part of approving an overlay, I didn't realize that it was going to be bringing in a truck stop with most of the time way over 10 trucks parked there overnight. And what is that, a 60-foot sign?
Yes.
Yeah. So I would urge everyone to, let's really think this stuff through because you bring up really good points that we should address. The how-to is the
That's the hard part.
sketchy part for me.
Yeah, how do we go about doing
I
it?
don't want to be a part of another truck stop in
And,
downtown Logansport.
yeah, so the Hoosier Heartland, yeah,
That was
that is an overlay.
done with an overlay, and then that allowed that to kind of sneak in.
So, no matter what, and one of the things that we've always talked about is people have the opportunity to go to the Board of Zoning Appeals and always rezone their properties whenever they want. They can always do that. the kind of issue is that as a board member on council or on the Board of Zoning Appeals, it's really hard to, I don't have any complaints in the audience, and how can I say no to this person when we want more tax space? Or, yeah, I would love to have, I'm just giving out the Jimmy John's or whatever it would be, or, this is a new gas station and they said their prices are going to be lower. Whatever it would be and whatever scenario happens, it's hard to be the one to say, no, this is our plan for the area. We're trying to clean it up. We're trying to make sure those uses fit in with the neighborhood. It's just hard to be in those positions. I don't ever want to be on those boards. So it's very hard. I get it. But the more that we can show why, the easier those people have. So, for example, a gas station. We change it to B3. The gas station has to come through the special exception. That board has to understand the surroundings, right? So this gas station here, across from the residential, is going to be different than this gas station that's across from commercial and has industrial behind it. Maybe it's the same. Maybe we have the same standards, but it's impacting that neighborhood differently. And it's hard because you're on the spot, right? You're on the spot, you have to make the decision that day.
Approximately how many residences are on the north side, say from
Here.
right there where you're at to the bridge?
I would say maybe like 20,
20?
yeah, maybe a little less.
Okay.
When you say they're notified, are they notified by
Barron, it's,
Quite a few.
Brown to Psychic.
return receipt request?
Yeah,
I'm sorry, Brown to Local.
Why?
yeah, because Brown,
Minus modern real estate.
yeah, I think it even goes to Heath because you have a little bit of residential across from McDonald's too.
Well, yeah, Wilkinson's on beyond.
Yeah. Oh, Wilkinson, yeah. They just have the vacant lot. So, for example, I know that this is the old car wash, and it's just a storage building really right now. But we have this vacant lot, not to say that anything would go there, but let's say, for example, and it's not zoned that, but let's say it was zoned B4, which is just across the street. We would have no say for another gas station or commercial garage to go there with the residential behind it. So you got to keep in mind, and it's hard, right? Because we're generalizing every block, every parcel, every ownership into like 13, 14 districts. And how can you say that that corner is the same as the corner across the street, right? So in zoning, it's very generalized, and we have that in our office. Well, 2 blocks down, if I would have bought this property, I could do this, but you're saying right here I can't?
Right.
But there has to be a line somewhere, and where is that line? And
Yeah, I
how,
think that's the difficult, like zoning is generalized, because generally, when you look at this map,
yeah,
the vast majority of the territory that you're over is going to be a certain class. You know,
Right.
residential is easy, except for the last block where
Yeah.
residential meets heavy highway.
right, exactly,
And-
There's always that crossover.
exactly.
So we just have to figure out. and
How do we make
I would lean towards the opinion that we reduce with special variance. Because if you look at any of these other cities that have developed and sort of gentrified, or what you'll see a lot of times too is the west side, you know, if somebody was to come and build a Texas Roadhouse, because that's what you hear people, they want
Right.
residents all the time, is some love to the west side. Well, you see it in all these other cities too. I mean, I was just in South Bend last week. Drove straight through South Bend, in on 23, out on 31, but through town. Sometimes these downtowns have a residential ring around them, and then just beyond that is the industrial era of the 1960s or 70s. And then that industrial area kind of folds, and the city then expands its boundaries.
Right,
And so you have this kind of industrial ring around the city encapsulated by new dollars and new investment. And it is, if you pay attention to that while you're driving through, if you take 31 straight into South Bend, you have this beautiful, you know, Menards, all these neighborhood business shopping centers with all the restaurants and Five Guys Burgers and everything. And then 7 blocks into town.
You have like the area that's dilapidated to some
You have
degree.
this dead zone of old.
And then you go into the downtown and then you're like, it's beautiful again.
100%, right?
Yeah.
Because that's what we have here, and that's what we will have here when inevitably the east end at $100,000 a linear foot for dirt becomes too expensive for an $8 hamburger joint to have an ROI. So they go, hey, I can buy $10,000 linear foot dirt at the 35 bypass on the west side, but then the development will then follow that. Because the new development always follows the first person to put in the new restaurant or the new business.
Right. And so what
So we're
happens?
gonna run into it again if we continue to let
Well-
industry inside of those walls.
And not only that, what happens is they want to go, the Burger King, for example, they want to go next to everything, but they have to find a location to fit it. They can't find a location to fit it anymore on Market Street, west of town. Because they don't want to go too far out, because then you're in subdivisions, right? You kind of have this like, you're in the county subdivision area into commercial, and there's not a lot of vacant space anymore. So what you're gonna see happen, and we've already heard people say like, well, this is a huge lot right here. I could build, I could build stuff here. I'll rezone this. And I will face my commercial facing Market Street, and the back of my commercial is gonna be the boulevard. Now, we as a community have to say, no, that's not gonna work for us. We understand that if you're just looking at a map, it makes sense.
What is that? No.
That's a house. It must have been sold to someone that doesn't want their name on here. But, yeah, so, but that's a large lot. So for a developer, they're like, it's at a lighted intersection across from all this commercial. All I have to do is go rezone that. That's a perfect location as a site selector. That's a perfect location. Now, so for these, you don't want to say even professional residential can go there, because none of these houses are facing towards Market. Where if on the west end, they face this street, so yes, it's residential, but maybe it makes sense, which is what it is right now, professional residential, meaning I can do taxes out of this building. It's not as intense for my neighbors, but I face that commercial, so having that professional office is not gonna really impact. Where if we did it on the boulevard, because they all actually, even though, if you're just looking at it and not knowing how the buildings face, it looks like it would make sense that it's at an intersection and it faces commercial. Well, it doesn't really. It's facing the opposite way, and that's their rear of their home. So allowing for businesses to go in that would be totally different than allowing businesses to go in these houses that face Arby's and McDonald's or what have you. And so it becomes this, I mean, it's a hard sell on any of it, but again, for another example, on the east end, these are neighborhood business. And I get why, they're smaller lots, and they back up to residential. Now, there's the rear of the residential, they're not the front side of the residential, but it's still an impact, right? Well, really, the elevation is different there. So how does that elevation change how it's impacted as well? A lot of them have, trees and stuff on the back end and an elevation change where it's not impacting these residents as much. Now, we don't require them to keep all that landscaping next to mobile behind them. So if they start tearing down trees, that's gonna impact these neighbors, because now they're gonna see all the lights, et cetera, of how that works, right? Same with the dentistry office that went here on the corner. Makes sense. All this is commercial here, why can't just one more? Well, then why not one more? And then all of a sudden, we're gonna start seeing the east end, because that's where these site selectors want to be, start buying up these homes and wanting to rezone them. Well, I'm across from AutoZone. I'm gonna buy up all these homes and put a business there. Well, heck, we have Partridge's and the old corner cupboard tobacco place, whatever it is now. Why not buy these? And if we're really going Marsh is right here and it's another commercial node, so why can't we just come all the way down? That's what you're gonna see happen over time, because you're gonna not have lots anymore on the east end. And if you can't tell, because of the buildup and the more people moving into town, you create traffic issues because we only have two ways into that area. You have High Street and Market Street. And then you have lights that go down, or lights that aren't timed right, and then now all of a sudden, you're backed up. And you have a bunch of drives that are all going onto that road, where they're not going onto a light that's getting everybody brought out. It's all individual drives. You know, you go to Lario's, how long is it gonna take you, depending on the time of day?
Turn right.
I agree. I've always said, turn right, go into Martin's, then go around, right? That's what we do. But that's not really a public street, but we use it as one, and we try not to go behind Applebee's, right, because of the drainage issues there and the potholes, right? So then now we're going down farther to come around, to come back up because we want to skip that because our car, or what have you. So whatever we're gonna do then creates additional things. So the more drives we're allowing, the more businesses that we're allowing, all kind of impacts. So this meeting is just to get your brain hurting, so that, so I told you before we started that I'm gonna hurt your brain of just understanding planning a little bit more, because we have to figure out what is that, you know, what's this on Broadway?
That's the funeral home.
Funeral home? Okay. The funeral home. So we only allow funeral homes in certain districts. Well, because maybe, I don't know the scenario, but I'm just giving you a scenario. This is Gundram. Yeah.
Okay.
So, for example, I'm a funeral home, and yes, I'm a funeral home in a residential district, but I want to be zoned so that I don't have to come back through a process. So make it a district that a funeral home's allowed in. Make me PR. That way, I can add on or make a parking lot for myself and buy this house next door and add more parking or what have you, without having to go through a process and notifying my neighbors. I'm not saying they did that. I'm just saying, like, for example, that's what happens. I want to put this here, or this building has always been here, so it should be a commercial garage, so zone me B4. That way I never have to go through a process. Well, maybe that's not the appropriate approach, and I think that's how we have zoned Logansport. What was there, and that's the zone it should be. Versus, what do we want to see develop there and make sure we're not impacting the neighborhood too much. And so, all of that to go back to neighborhood business, right? That's where we really started. Is our neighborhood business enough of a district to tweak and not have to add another district? Or do we tweak our zones to say, yeah, the East End really is like, our West End is really like our East End. Let's make it B3, but just scale back signage and lighting. Or leave it how it is. You know, those are the things we need to talk about, because it is neighborhood business right now. Which is why our neighborhood business says, oh, a grocery store can be on a thoroughfare, because DNR's there. We don't want to say they have to go through a process, right? Well, if that's how that whole west side is, and we say, well, we want these type of uses here because they're not across from residential, then why aren't we zoning it that way instead of making our neighborhood business, which is random, very random spots in our community, as you saw earlier, to say, yeah, but if you're here, it's okay. Maybe it just makes more sense to rezone it to the B3 and allow those type of uses.
40, 50 years ago, they didn't really have that much planning. I mean,
I think
because DNR used to be a truck stop that turned into
to DNR.
to DNR Market. Then you had the car lot clear down that used to be a Keitzer's Drive-In. And then there was Harvey's Drive-In. I mean, I felt like it wasn't really developed so much. You just, like Kessling's. Did they just stick it there? Kessling's Drugstore.
Right.
I mean, it just, to me, that's just what happened, where B&B
And I
was
think
always there.
with just looking at, you know,
Yeah.
we've done some spot not spot zonings, but rezoning of spots of town. But we've not really focused on the West End in the past really. But if you look at it, it's like they rezoned it to what was there, but then made neighborhood business fit what was there versus neighborhood business being like your little, like, okay, fine, a grocery store, but it has to be under 1,000 square feet, so it fits that neighborhood versus 20,000 square feet grocery store, or whatever, we just say grocery store. Well, maybe that, we don't want a grocery store, a large grocery store in some of our neighborhoods, but if Lombardi came back and that's 1,000 square foot, maybe it makes sense, so that neighborhood has it. So when I go back to this, what I talked about before, when we were looking at these, maybe it's, I'm, like I said, I'm making your brain hurt because I'm still trying to figure out what the best route is. And Jamie and I was like, do we make a new district? Do we make overlays? Is it lighting and signage? Is it the use? Those type of things. It could be a grocery. We could say, just like we do here, retail, anything under 5,000. That's allowed on the East End and allowed everybody. Let's say in the small neighborhoods, we make it 1,000. Let's say grocery stores. You can have a grocery store, but it has to be this size. That way, we're scaling it to the neighborhoods they're in. But right now, we just leave it blanket. Restaurant, grocery store, commercial garage. That doesn't give us a scaling for our districts. I've given a lot of information to you. I'm not keeping you here forever because we're not going to solve it today. I just wanted you guys to kind of go through that thought process with me so that you can be really confused and your head hurting, but be a little more knowledgeable in planning and all the different things to think about just in a little rezone or just in a little standard change. Because the neighbors want it, they want to be able to come, and this all kind of started with the Marsh building. Some neighbors don't care because DNR's always been there, so if they want to expand, fine, let them expand, it's fine. They can add a new plant section. I love going there for plants. No one cares about it, right? But but then you have the Marsh where it's like, okay, but do we allow these uses here? Then they're like, well, I don't really like that one. Or I don't want this one, because this one would do this, but I like that one. They have the same intensities really, but it's because of what we're used to. So some of the things that we've talked about before, like signage. Signage is there. Now when we start adding a bunch of businesses, now we have all this new signage, and now we're like, wow, that sign's covering that sign, and signs everywhere, and now it's sign clutter. So it's hard as citizens to go, what do we really want? Because that's what's always been there. So it's okay. I'm okay with that because that's always been there, but something new is going to cause a problem. But we zone it for what's there, which allows those other things to go. And so that's the hard part. And where's that line of making those changes? So as you drive around, I feel like a teacher. As you drive around, just keep those things in mind. And I mean, as Tom does, you guys can call me and be like, hey, I was thinking, if we go this route, I like it because of this. Or if we go that route, I don't like it because of this. I think just our conversations will help me figure out what Plan Commission feels is appropriate. Because it's not Aaron's standards. It's supposed to be community standards. And so asking your friends or putting it all on you, what have you, I know you always think it's Aaron's stuff, but I do a lot of listening as well. And so it's hard because West End, everybody's just like, I want something. I want something to work on the West End. I want it to be pretty. I want it to look nice, and I want stuff. I know, but it's just not going to be the East End. It never will be. But how do we?
No, I think to Jackson's point, it will be eventually.
At some point.
Because investors are going to come in and see the return on their investment. It just takes the first couple to go in there. And I know we don't think, because we like it this way, but I think the gas station coming in as modern is a good step.
And I think that, the gas station that was put in on the west side, they made it look nicer. But we don't have those standards. That's just their business plan.
But we should have told them what to put in there, and he did a good job, and to his credit, I typically throw rocks at him, but in this case, he built a nice gas station. But I think that's gonna help the area. It's not decreasing the look of the area.
Right. It's just,
Another great example is like 421, when you drive into Zionsville. I mean, they've got all the services that you could imagine for a PR or a B3 district, but you hardly notice that from 106th Street to 465, you drive past 7 gas stations in 12 blocks of travel. And it's like, unless you're looking for one, you drive by them all.
Well, and that's the-
nice brick facade, dentist office,
Your
and they
opportunity,
match.
they do match, but your opportunity is to get the car dealerships off that street when people start coming in with money and want to put businesses there, because the used cars are probably the first to go, because they have big lots and space. And that would change the look.
so what you guys are saying is basically, it might be a twofold. It's the uses that we allow, but then scaling those uses to the neighborhood,
Exactly.
which I get. But to do that, you almost have to create its own little area, because the
Sure.
west side is gonna be different than the south side, that's gonna be different than the
Yeah,
north
but
side.
Maybe it should have a west side development committee or something that says, this is what we want this area to be. And so
Right.
any new business needs to have these
Yeah.
Thanks.
yeah.
I mean, we're ahead of the curve on 18th Street, right? And that.
We put a lot of
exists.
standards on there, yeah.
We put a ton of standards on there.
So maybe it's-
Why
maybe-
can't there be a subset?
And maybe we start that now, so the next business that comes in. So when that car dealership turns over, eventually, someone can jump on that and put something in there that we want to see.
Yeah. The other thing I was just gonna mention really quick is that, we have Cass County Reimagined. We have Logansport Reimagined, now Cass County Reimagined that's doing the red. I don't know the acronym. Rural Engagement.
Development.
I don't know. Anyway, that's recorded, so, and not live, so I'm gonna get in trouble that I don't know what it stands for. But anyway, that I'm part of. We just had a meeting last week about what are the things that we want to see improve, and there's been there was like 1,200 surveys, there was and neighborhood beautification came up. And in that, what we talked about is having these neighborhoods, having advocates that are the ones that help us understand their neighborhood. And maybe that's the first step in understanding what they want. Not the problem, but as we went through everything, they can tell me what they want, but then they have to understand what that means. You know what, I really want X, Y, and Z. Okay, well, that means that we're gonna have to tell all these people that every time they're expanding, they can't do it.
But I agree, you make it harder for businesses to be in the area you don't want them in. And that's just urban development.
Yeah.
Sorry, but I don't want that used car half place that's next to the old dilapidated Mexican restaurant / nightclub thingy. Like that place,
Right.
those are eyesores to our community.
Right.
And if that comes available, or, they start violating our ordinances, they need to be pressured and pressured and pressured, so we can get something in there that makes more sense.
And I think this, it's just starting out, obviously, the neighborhood beautification, but I think it's not just pull your own weeds and clear your inlets and those type of things, which are great, because there's no cost in that. But what we were trying to say in this was maybe creating a neighborhood, like, you're on the boulevard, you are the boulevard, right? You're in Midtown, you're in Midtown. Not all of our areas in town have a feel, a neighborhood, like Marlton Hills, it's Marlton Hills, you guys all kind of talk to each other, whatever. Like, it's not all of our areas in town have that neighborhood feel, or if we can create that neighborhood and have those advocates, when we have rezones or someone coming to BZA, we have those advocates to say, this is your opportunity to come in and say, no, that is concerning to me, or what have you. So I think it all really pairs together. So as we move forward, I think those are all things that we have to take in consideration. I'm just spewing a bunch of stuff to you guys, but I think it helps in understanding what planning is and what we need to be looking for and thinking about as stuff moves forward, so.
Rural Empowerment and Development Program.
That's right, and I knew that. But I think, you know, having those identities to say, hey, I'm on the west side, and this is what I want for my community, and there's 20 other neighbors that want the same thing, great, come to these meetings. One of the other things that we've talked about is not as a requirement, because then if a sign becomes missing, that's, we couldn't have the public hearing and stuff like that, but signs like you see in other communities saying, this is coming up for discussion when a business comes in. So if we're not allowing gas stations there, and we only have to notify people within 100 feet, and in the newspaper that not everybody's reading, there's a sign there to let them know as that advocate or whatever, maybe this is something I need to come to. So we're trying to do a few of those type of things. Right now, it's kind of the website that's the issue, because we don't have a holding spot for all that information, but they're working, the city's working on their website, so I'm hoping that'll be something that happens in the future, so citizens will know what's going on in their areas. So, anyway,
Thank you, Madam Director.
we are not saving the world, we are not fixing anything today, but
Trying to save Logan's.
Nice job.
Food for thought.
food for thought, yep.
We have somebody that's coming in here soon. I would very happily accept a motion, entertain a motion to adjourn.
I entertain.
Second.
Well,